Hi, so I wanted to make a video today a bit about the twin flame journey as I understand it. And I am no expert on this, but I've just been watching a few videos, done a bit of reading on it, and I thought that there seems to be some confusion out there with regards to a twin flame or a soulmate. And so I thought I'd just make a little video on the twin flame journey and my thoughts, my feelings, what I've learned so far. So, I used to think that the twin flame idea might be a little bit of a gimmick. It was a word I'd heard bandied about a bit. I've been on a sort of on-off spiritual journey now for some 15, nearly 20 odd years. And I'm sort of in between various different spiritual modalities, I guess. And so I've heard the term twin flame, but I really didn't pay it too much attention at all, because I was aware of the idea of a soulmate. And so I kind of thought the two were interchangeable. And it's only in perhaps more recent months that I've realised they're not interchangeable and that there's a marked difference. And the twin flame journey it's quite an extraordinary journey. A soulmate is quite an extraordinary person in your life too, of course. The soulmate energy tends to be the sort of energy like a safe harbour. Your soulmate energy tends to be someone who is also a very good friend as well as your partner. You tend to get on very well with them. You're very compatible with them. It's an energy that just sort of holds you and nurtures you and doesn't challenge you, and vice versa. It's a beautiful space. It's a beautiful place to be. And many people tend to think that the soulmate is the person that you spend the rest of your life with, and then the twin flame, maybe not so much, because the twin flame energy can be, it's a catalyst for change. It's literally your mirror self. It's literally your other half. Whereas people tend to think of a soulmate as your other half, the twin flame is literally another part of you. Your soul and their soul are always intertwined. And actually, that's one thing that can give you comfort if you're on a twin flame journey, because it can be such a tricky journey, and that's putting it mildly. So if you're having difficulty on your twin flame journey, you can draw comfort from the fact that your soul and their soul are never apart. They're always together on the spiritual plane. It's just in this 3D that you are not together, you know? But just because it can be really difficult and a catalyst for change and very challenging indeed, because you're mirroring each other, you're showing each other what needs to be healed in the other, and all of that, it doesn't necessarily mean you can't come together, because I think the idea is ultimately a union or a reunion with your twin flame. But that said, it's a journey, and it's going to be a journey that perhaps is different in some ways for everyone. And the reunion may happen in this lifetime, it may happen in another lifetime. And there's so many elements to it, and there's so many elements to it that could differentiate it from other types of relationship as well. With a twin flame, you've generally got a time when you come together initially, and probably neither of you know what the connection is. It could be a very passionate connection. Then you tend to share apart, and this is the thing, sometimes there's separation for many years, in some cases maybe 10, 20, 30, 40 years before coming together again. And it's usually the divine feminine, The people undergoing this journey are usually known as the divine feminine, the divine masculine. It's usually the female that works out the connection first. There's usually a runner-chaser dynamic. The divine masculine can often be an avoidant type of personality. And yeah, you've got this period of separation very often. One of the key things is that there will be this spiritual awakening. There will be a dark night of the soul very often, and a spiritual awakening. These are kind of key parts to it, because I see it as a very sacred connection as well. It's a divine connection, and your journey with the divine forms part of it. And although it can be very easy to get stuck on the idea of coming together, ultimately as well, it's balancing the opposites within you. So it's balancing the yin and the yang energies, the masculine and the feminine within you. It's healing the self. It's learning and growing. There's an awful lot of learning and growing in the relationship. There will be a period of limerence, extreme magnetism, whereby, you know, it can be insane, and it can be a lot stronger when you're older as well. The absolute magnetism of the other person, it can blow your mind. But because it's a journey, and these are sort of initial phases, and I tend to find that the limerence can wear off once you start to heal a bit on the inner planes as well. But not necessarily, that isn't to say it's something that's going to fade and then just go, because once you've awakened, once you've become awakened to this, then it's just there because this person is a part of you already. But you can go through all of that and think that you understand the journey, but it is still a journey, and there's more to learn. And one of the things that can suddenly hit you is this person can feel like they're with you all of a sudden. It can feel like they're in your energy, so you can be just doing your daily stuff, your daily routine, not necessarily thinking of them in that moment. And then suddenly it's almost like the divine is superimposing them into your life. You can feel haunted by them. You can feel their energy with you. It's like they're in the room with you. Their energy is just there, no matter what it is you're doing. And I think when you sort of get to that stage, you're really at a point where it's like the amount that they're with you, the amount that you're aware of their energy, and your feelings for them and all the rest of it mean that it can start to spill out into your life. It can be harder to keep a lid on it if you have been for any reason, if you've thought you've needed to, you know. So it can almost feel like this imposition at times, because you've got this feeling, these feelings are imposing themselves upon your life. You know, we always think that we have free will and all the rest of it, but this journey, it's a sacred journey, and it's something that you and your partner would have probably sort of co-created together and planned in between lives, potentially, you know. So it's like something that's kind of destiny. It's not necessarily something that the 3D you wants in that moment, or even has any comprehension of, you know. It gets you on a journey of learning and discovery as well, because once you start having all of these feelings, they're so big, they're kind of just too big to just carry alone, without doing a bit of research, without trying to look into it, without help from the divine. So if you've already got a relationship with the divine, asking the divine for help and guidance, and then, you know, maybe going to tarot readers. There's an awful lot of readings in the collective at the moment. So readings for the collective online that carry an awful lot of wisdom, and I think carry an awful lot of parallels with an awful lot of people's individual circumstances. And I know that for some people reading that, they might just think, oh, it's just like the Barnum effect. It's just whereby you can read something into a situation. You know, it's just general enough that you can think it's personal and it's for you. And I understand that that can exist and that can be a thing, but I don't think this is that, you know. I think when you start to go on this journey, it's also very humbling, because you suddenly realize that life isn't just about you. It's transpersonal. It's about you. It's about this person. They are a part of you and you them. This is where forgiveness comes in so very much as well. Forgive, 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 forgive. Again and again, forgiving yourself and forgiving them, because they are literally a part of you. So if there's a part of them you can't forgive, it's like there's a part of you, you know. If you want to reject them, you're literally rejecting a part of yourself. It's an extraordinary journey. It's an extraordinary learning experience. And so you realize with regards to these readings online as well, the transpersonal element there is that there are cohorts of people being scooped up at particular times, and brought back together. It's like these just waves upon waves of sort of cosmic rays coming in at the moment and just scooping up twin flames, and they're crashing together. And there's all sorts of similarities in the readings at the moment, uncanny similarities. And this leads me to the uncanny and the supernatural as well, because if you're on this twin flame journey, you're going to have these key things that will happen. You're going to have the dark night of the soul. You're going to have your spiritual awakening. You're going to have spiritual and supernatural happenings, as I say, sort of superimposed upon you by the divine. Some might be welcome, some might not be welcome. You know, this isn't about your convenience. This is about something else, something bigger than you, something beyond perhaps what you can comprehend in that moment, what any of us can truly comprehend, you know. So you're going to find that you have dreams of this person. Maybe you'll astral travel together, and have conversations in the astral plane. Maybe you'll start seeing signs and experiencing synchronicities. If you start experiencing signs, a very common way to see signs all over the place is what people say are angel numbers. So for instance, you might have a thought about your person and then glance at the clock and it might be 2:22. And then you might start seeing, say, 2:22 all over the place, or 22:22, and 1:1 or 4 ones. You know, these are all sort of common signs, which can be, you know, and if you look up the corresponding angel meanings, it's usually words of encouragement from spirit as well, to say you're on your path and don't worry. The more you worry, the more you fret, the more in your head you are, the more you're going to block the connection. The actual connection doesn't work in the way a normal connection would work. So you can't rationalize it and you can't logic it away. As I say, you can have all sorts of extraordinary experiences with your person, regards feeling them, getting quite telepathic with them. You know, you might find that you're thinking of them at a certain time and then they contact you at that time, and so on. You might find that there is a level of telepathy there. Intuition, intuitive downloads will start coming in as well, and you're going to get a sense of who this person is intuitively in your life too. Ultimately, the journey seems to be a journey of self-discovery as much as anything else. The universe tends to talk to us quite obliquely. The universe doesn't give us like a roadmap, like in a concrete way. We get these sort of hints and divinations and intuitive hits, and, you know, it's all like, instead of a concrete roadmap going, right, go down the road for 300 yards, take a left, go down that road for another 500 yards, turn right, etc. Instead of concrete steps with the universe, what you get is like little hints, sometimes big hints, sometimes incredible feelings, sometimes overwhelming feelings, sometimes little tiny signs like fireflies dancing in in the night. You're gonna get all kinds of things going on, but you generally don't get somebody saying, yes, this is your twin flame, proceed. Absolutely, and other people can't really tell you your connection. They can say it might look a bit like a twin flame, it might sound a bit like a twin flame, but ultimately the journey is also a journey of self-discovery. So as you go down this path, you discover more and more about yourself, about your own intuition, about learning to trust in the divine and your intuition, and discover all of these things about your twin flame, about this connection. So it is a journey of discovery. And because there's some elements of trust and things involved as well, it can start to get a bit precarious, because there are things out there. There are, traps for the unwary. So some people talk about a false twin flame, for example, which can have very similar feelings and synchronicities and signs and various things as well, and get people very much thinking, well, this must be my twin flame, just to complicate things even more, So it can be very difficult to know absolutely what's going on. Ultimately, you have to stay a bit grounded where you can, because sometimes you're not going to be. So sometimes if you are absolutely thrown, completely in the moment, then you might want to come back down to earth, meditate a bit, ground yourself, practice grounding exercises, literally walk barefoot in nature. And if you meditate before you do a meditation, literally visualize roots coming down from the bottom of your feet, plunging deep, deep into the earth, and spend a bit of time visualizing that. It's a simple grounding exercise, but it can work to get you out of your head, especially if you're an overthinker. I think the twin flame journey, if you're an overthinker, is just hell on toast, because you are constantly trying to rationalize, work it out, put it into a category that you can understand and then move on from, But this is not that. Again, anything that you try to do that you would normally solve a problem with, rational, logical type of thinking, isn't going to work with a twin flame journey. It's like you've been flipped into an alternate universe, and you've now got to discover the language and signs in this alternate universe. And it's discombobulating, it's confusing, it's precarious. But ultimately, as I say, it's a journey of discovery, because the more you sit with it patiently, the more answers are going to come. And it is a journey. It is a journey, and it's happening for a reason, Some people just want to reject the journey because it can be so painful, because especially when you're in a period of separation, there can still be all of these yearnings, the limerence, the absolute yearning, the magnetic pull, the feeling of having their energy literally with you in the same room as you. All of these things can be so strong and confusing and mind-blowing, and literally just propel you out of the world that you thought you knew and put you into a different world. I think anyway, if you're dealing with anything of the spiritual, you'll know that there can be a fine line perhaps between thinking that you're going a bit mad and having an actual spiritual experience, And you can see it with some people sometimes. There's this fine line perhaps between being a bit delusional and talking about things that are spiritual, because you're talking about things that you can't deal with logic in the normal way, and because you're talking about the divine, and because elements of faith and trust come into it. and because literally you're talking about signs and synchronicities and things that you can't quantify in a sort of scientific way. You can't objectively quantify. If you were going to try and tell a friend about this in a pub, and it's a mate who knows you quite well but who hasn't got any interest in spirituality, for example, where would you even start? How could you impress upon somebody the absolute wild magnetism of the thing? And chances are, if you tried, they'd probably think, well, that sounds quite dodgy, dodgy energy. I'd leave that alone. I'd walk away from it. Because obviously there can be, for some people, there can be an obsessive type of love out there as well for some people that isn't a twin flame type of energy, but is just an obsessive type of love, which is not healthy. If people are going into that sort of energy, there can be stalker-like vibes and all sorts of things going on, and none of that is healthy or good. But when it comes to the twin flame, it's a different story. The limerence and all the rest of it, it's getting your attention. The universe is getting your attention. This connection is getting your attention. And it's a dance. The more you try to push it away, chances are the more it's going to come back. The more you try to get into your head and apply logic, the more confusing and discombobulating it's going to become. The more you think you can just ignore it, get on with your life, the more confused you're going to be, because it's still going to be there. But then now it's there and you haven't applied any thought to it or anything to it. So it's just there and remains confusing, and you remain stuck, So it's as much about a personal journey to the self, like a deep self, like the core part of you as well, because you're opening up spiritually as well. You're opening up trust to the divine, and you can talk to the divine. This isn't about blind faith. This is about a communion with, or a communication, two-way communication with the divine, which is within you after all. It's a part of you. So there's so many different elements to the twin flame journey, and the soulmate journey is just different. The soulmate journey is going to be, you come together in a very gentle way. You have a feeling of recognition, and it can feel like coming home, and it can be very beautiful. And then you can just stay together and have very beautiful lives together. And, one doesn't diminish the other. The soulmate relationship can be very, very beautiful. Some people might say that twin flames are not for life. They can serve as a catalyst for change within you, whereas a soulmate is for life, and so on and so forth. Other people might say that a soulmate is not for life because there's not much change or growth there. And that so sometimes you need to go back to your twin flame because it does serve as such a catalyst, but also because this is part of you. So the idea of reunion at some stage or other is kind of inevitable, is kind of a goal, But that's the other thing as well, to try to make it a goal. If you're the feminine in this, if you're the female energy in this, you can't chase it, okay? The idea is that you attract, you don't chase. And you go into yourself. Part of the dark night of the soul energy for the female as well is she has nowhere else to go, because the twin flame, the male, is typically not awake and aware of the connection. So she has to retreat back into herself and nourish and cherish herself, which helps lose any codependency habits, because very often she has some work to do on herself, just as the twin flame does on him. And so she has to discover more of who she is spiritually. She has to go within, answer the call, answer the spiritual call, become who she's meant to be, really start getting into that energy. and getting into the energy of just whatever it is she's supposed to be doing on this planet, her divine purpose, and doing that. So lots of creativity will no doubt come into play, and opening up spirituality. And that's the thing as well. The more the divine feminine comes into herself, the more that will attract in the energy of her counterpart. One is because the truth is that you're never really separate anyway, not on the spiritual plane. It's kind of an illusion of separation in a way on the 3D. But also because as she goes within and she nourishes and cherishes herself and expands her sense of self to include more of her spiritual self, her higher self, as she's calling all of that energy in and getting to know that energy, then she's going to be calling in the twin flame energy. She's going to be calling in her divine counterpart because it's part of her, and she's calling in more parts of herself and expanding her awareness to include more parts of herself, expanding her sense of self in that way. So it's kind of like a process that happens through healing, through growth, through understanding, through great love, through great compassion, compassion for the self, compassion for the other, forgiveness for the self, forgiveness for the other. It's only through the deepening of great authenticity that all of this works. There can be no masks and there can be no ego. The ego has to be dropped. So if one or the other of you has been hiding behind a mask for many years, in some cases with the divine masculine, hiding behind masks out of fear, in the ego, in their minds, in the logical, rational part of their minds, they're going to have to learn to drop it and come into their hearts, come into the place of authentic expression. That can be terrifying for a male because typically there can be quite a lot of avoidant personalities on this journey. And so for the male, it can be terrifying because for many, many years, they've built a persona based upon who they are in the material world. And that's informed their identity. That's their place of safety. You know, they've built up a potentially successful career. They've got an outward persona of success. And that informs their sense of self to a great degree. And all of that is not going to be primary considerations in this connection. In this connection, it's about the truth of who they are at heart. And that authentic expression, just expressing that truth. And that to the male could be the most terrifying thing ever, because sometimes, especially for avoidant personalities, from what I'm gathering, expressing a truth in that regard, an emotional truth, could be terrifying. Perhaps they grew up in an environment where people didn't express emotions easily, and so they just learned to shut away emotions. It became safer. Emotions were not safe to be expressed. They were not met in a safe way. They were not received in a safe way, and they were not reciprocated in kind. And perhaps that was very hurtful. And so they retreated in getting good grades, in being really good at school, in being really good at their jobs, creating and constructing these material personas, materialistic personas, or just very successful people, you know. And we all know that when you start on the spiritual journey, all is required is that you show up with a bit of love, you know. It doesn't matter what you are in the world on the spiritual journey, and the same is true of the twin flame. And that isn't to put down in any way any achievements in the material world, because that's truly amazing, right? If you've achieved some really cool things, but it is to say that that has become a safety mechanism, but also a distancing device to some degree, right? Because people can hide behind a persona without actually having to open up emotionally. And that isn't going to fly in this connection. So that can be an enormous challenge for the divine masculine on this journey. And the divine feminine too has got work to do and issues to try to start resolving, going within. With both parties, then it's about learning about the shadow, the Jungian shadow, doing the healing work, getting it done. No one expects either party to show up fully healed. We're all of us works in progress. But the idea is that there is that element of self-awareness there and a willingness to can't even speak now, a willingness to learn and a willingness to work on the issues that need the work, you know. And for the divine feminine, codependency is one of the issues that can come up. Maybe that could be an issue for both parties as well. So learning to come back to herself, and as I say, on this journey, coming back to herself is crucial, because that initial either rejection or the twin flame is just not keen on pursuing the connection for whatever reason. So coming back to herself and really focusing on herself in a very loving, nurturing way, and focusing on that relationship with the divine, and focusing on love and the creativity and the joy and the beauty and being the light spiritually and all of that is very healing, it's very nourishing, and it's going to start sorting out any sort of codependency issues there as well. So it's a real journey to go within. Ultimately, it's all about love. Everything comes back to love. We are born from love. Great Spirit is love at core. Okay, all of this, the distortions within religions about sin and all the rest of it, ultimately it's all love. But it's also a journey about going within, finding out who you are at a very core level. And that's no small beans, right? That's a huge journey. But ultimately, they're a part of you and you're a part of them anyway. So it's all kind of about your own journey and the healing that you do within and the nourishment that you provide and the self-care and self-love that you have. Is all part of it. Knowing your self-worth, having that good sense of self-worth. All of these things are vital to this connection. So it's one heck of a thing. It's one heck of a thing. And meantime, of course, you're doing all of this, but you're going to be experiencing some difficult emotions at times, because it's a challenge and it's a challenging journey. And it can be very easy to say these things, but very difficult to actually start acting on them, because chances are these are personas that you might have built up over your entire lives. And so having these personas challenged in any way can be quite difficult to actually go in and do your shadow work. And the shadow, as Carl Jung defined the term, the shadow in psychoanalytical, terms, it's basically a repository for all of the things that we don't want to look at. It's basically a repository for the things that we don't like about ourselves, all of those sort of things, the unconscious, some of the unconscious areas, and also some subconscious thoughts and feelings and things like this as well. And sometimes I guess it could be a potential even, but it's all of the things in that collectively or individually that we wouldn't want to look at. And it's kind of useful to have that self-awareness anyway, regardless of if you're on the twin flame journey. Yeah, it's very useful having some semblance of psychological knowledge and self-awareness. Would be critical, I would say, anyway, as a foundations for any good society, right? If you look at the Western world at the moment, for example, you could say quite reasonably that we are in the grip of a collective madness, or many different kinds of collective madness, and that we are seemingly doomed to repeat the same problems over and over again. And I would say an awful lot of that, actually, I would say the main crux of that is because We're not aware of who we are spiritually, not really, not collectively. We're not aware that we're one consciousness experiencing itself subjectively. But also, I would say it's because we don't have that grounding in psychology, not really. We teach kids to be good little robots and learn by rote and then go out into the world and be good little robots at work, so that people keep just looking at what looks to be a spider on the wall. But it's fine. We're good. Spiders are cool. But yeah, and then they go out into the world and they're kind of good little robots at work. And then the idea behind that is, you know, that it keeps the wheels of society turning, right? Because if you had everybody going off being very individualistic and questioning their role in society and questioning and stepping outside of society, then you're not going to have the cohesion needed to keep society going, right? So there's got to be certain things that keep it cohesive. I can understand that, but there needs to be a sort of willingness to want it to work, born from love. Ultimately, again, it all comes back to love. You know, we've given primacy in society for many years now, ever since the dawn of the Industrial Revolution and the Enlightenment in the 18th century. We have given primacy to a very mechanistic sort of view of the world, haven't we? We've given primacy to the logical, the rational, the scientific, the things of the material realm that you can touch, taste, see, smell, the things that you can quantify objectively. These have all been given a heck of a lot of primacy over, say, the irrational, say supernatural elements, spiritual elements, things that you cannot easily quantify but are no less important. You know, if you were to ask anyone who's had a spiritual experience what that was like for them, if they've had an amazing awakening experience, they're going to tell you it blew their mind. It's changed their life completely. It's shifted them from their head straight into their heart. It's given them so much compassion and love and forgiveness, and shed an awful lot of fears that are limiting. We know that if people are coming from a place of fear, that this is quite a toxic kind of place to come from, right? It keeps us small. It keeps us shrinking back. It can distort our thinking. Fear is not an enlivening place to come from, or to build a society from, or anything like that, you know. And so I think we've got it all wrong anyway for the last, I don't know, couple of 100 years at least on this planet. But yeah, it's about coming back to the heart. Ultimately, it's about coming back to the heart and opening up to that relationship with the divine. And again, coming back to talking about how that can be seen as delusional, because when you do start to do that, you're going to get messages. Sometimes you might hear the divine, sometimes you might have visions. You know, anything can happen when you start a relationship, when you start opening up spiritually. And I would encourage anyone to meditate and to start a journey. But again, in the Western world, we want to view everything in a very sort of logical way. And so very often people talk about meditation as really good. They say it's really good for your blood pressure. You know, it's a really good thing to do. Everyone should meditate. Which they should. I think they should. One caveat would be once you've got a really good persona. So, you know, because it's about dismantling an awful lot of the ego. So you want to have a fairly good ego. You don't really want to meditate perhaps before the age of about, I don't know, I would say even 25, maybe even 30, because you need your outward persona to be strong. You need your outward persona to be strong, your boundaries to be in place, your sense of self to be rock solid, before you can start to dismantle it, because then you can create much better balance at being in the world but not of the world, and meditating but still managing to pay your bills and so on and so forth. You're going to have that good yin yang balance. Whereas if you were to meditate aged 10 or 15, you're going to be floating off into the ether, but maybe not able to come back down to the ground, to get out there, get a job, get a career path, anything like that, you know. So it's about balance. It's about balance. But ultimately, it all comes back down to love. And yeah, with meditation as well, people will talk about it in those terms. They'll say, oh, yes, it's very good. It's a toolbox for the mind. It's a very good thing, which it is. It really is. But they say it's very good. It's, lowers your blood pressure, da-da-da. But what they're not going to say is it's a doorway as well. You're opening a door to the spiritual, and you don't know what's going to be behind that door necessarily. But anything that you do with regards to spiritual healing or meditation or yoga or anything like that, potentially it does open a door. And, that isn't a terrifying concept. Once you start to open a door spiritually, you're going to want to have better, healthier practices in your life. You're just going to want to. Because it's almost like shining a light upon any areas that are messy and unhealed. And you'll want to cleanse yourself much more than you might otherwise. So you're going to want to watch healthier TV shows. You're going to want to eat healthier foods. You're going to want to be around people that are uplifting and kind and decent people. It's just it's going to help sort things out a lot for you. But also, once you start opening up spiritually as well, you're going to be aware, and you can't really open a door if you are indulging in any, say, darker, unhealthy practices, because you could then open a door to perhaps attract in some darker energies into your energy field that you don't want. So, it just comes down to having healthier practices anyway and wanting to do that. But that's all an aside, that's all an aside. Ultimately then, if you're on a twin flame journey, it's confusing, it's discombobulating. But I think it's really helpful to drop the idea of reunion as being the ultimate goal. Whatever is for you won't go by you. And when you can feel, especially when you can feel their energy just suddenly hit you out of nowhere, like it's being superimposed onto you, like you're being haunted by them, even though they're alive and, and all the rest of it, and you're literally haunted. But when you think that these things are happening, it might be very easy to want to run from that, and it might be because it's very painful as well, and it is painful. But I always think anything like this, my approach would tend to be to sit with the pain, to sit with the difficulty, not like wallow in it, but just have that awareness and just think about what it could mean and why it's there, and realise that whatever is happening for you, not to you. There are times when it might feel like hell on earth, right? It might. There are some very unhappy people out there going through the twin flame journey. It really can be difficult. But bear in mind, it's a journey of the soul, of the spirit. It's there to help you become stronger as well, right? Whatever is for you won't go by you. If it's meant to be, it will be. But all of the journey, the difficulty and the darkness that can be encompassed in this journey too, is there to make you stronger as well. I keep drawing every now and again in my cards that I draw, because I do various card readings for myself. And one of the cards that I draw over the last few years, every now and again, is literally kind of like, I can't remember what it's called now, like Black Tiger Path or something like this. But it's literally, diamond. Like the Black Diamond Tiger, something like this. I can't remember. Anyway, it's something like that. And the idea is that you're literally crushed like a bit of coal until you come into a diamond. So when I first came across this card a few years ago during COVID, I was thinking, oh, for God's sake, really? Like, why? Why, God? Why? And it can be challenging. Certain things can be challenging in life. Absolutely. But it's one of those things, isn't it? If you cannot run from the challenge, but actually sit with the fire, don't run from it, and sit in it, then it will absolutely make you stronger as a result, but also wiser and a bit deeper, and then more confident in yourself too, because you're coming through it, but you're learning, and you're learning more about yourself too. So understand, I think if you can come from it from that perspective too, if that's helpful, to just think, okay, so there's an element here that I need for my learning. Not like I'm being punished by God, because a lot of people on the twin flame journey might be forgiven for thinking that. You're not being punished, There could be karmic elements to this. But if you're actually on the twin flame journey, then it's there to help you. And eventually there will be a reunion, quite probably. Your soul and their soul are merging anyway. That's the other thing as well. Although your soul and their soul are together, on the twin flame journey, they become more aligned, more powerfully aligned. And I think this is one reason why sometimes you're being hit with their energy, and perhaps vice versa, because it's such an extraordinary thing, and that's known as the Hieros Gamos. The Da Vinci Code talks about that as well. And that's the soul merge, when your souls are merging. And this can be a precursor to an actual physical reunion, from what I gather, So it can feel extraordinary, and sometimes the extraordinary can feel too much. It can feel too overwhelming. As I say, you might question your sanity several times over during this whole thing, right? Because it sounds bonkers. And if you try to quantify it or talk to another human about it who has no idea what you're on about, you're not going to be met probably with an easy reception. It's going to be met with an awful lot of disbelief and downright blatant skepticism, But there are elements of the spiritual journey which do defy logic. We can think of the spiritual journey as, you simply sit in meditation a lot until you attain some level of bliss and transpersonal awareness. The ego dissolves, and that's it, the end. Everyone goes home and everything is fine. And of course it isn't that. I think there's a saying, before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. Because it isn't as though you become enlightened and everything stops. You still have to be grounded. You still have to carry on with your day-to-day practices. The only difference is now, if you've become enlightened, you do it from an entirely different perspective. Transpersonal completely, because the ego has completely dissolved. And most of us will never get to that point within our lifetimes. And also the spiritual journey can be wildly different for everyone. So some people see the spiritual journey as just being this blissful journey. You go off, you do happy retreats and you sit in bliss for a bit and that's it. And of course that isn't it. Communing with spirit, having awakening experiences and having blissful experiences are very, very beautiful and very necessary at times, right? Because it's these experiences that can help carry us through the darker times. But that isn't the sole purpose of spirituality, I think of becoming more spiritual as just becoming more aware of self, because becoming more spiritual isn't doing something outside of yourself. It's just becoming more aware of who you are. And then also with that awareness is coming back to love, because you're aware that you are coming from love, that everything is love, that you're in your heart more. You're coming out of fear more. You're stepping more into compassion and kindness for others. And then you're more able to be more giving, more loving, and much more kind. And these are beautiful qualities, so that to me is a bit more about what spirituality is all about. Really, it's a discovery. It's just a discovery of who you are. It's greater awareness. It's greater awareness in a way. So yeah, so I guess that's gonna do it for today. It's a weird journey. It's a weird journey, but very, very different from a soulmate. And the idea that you should be with one and not the other. No one can prescribe anything onto another person. For someone, it might be that they've perhaps popped back together with a twin flame for a while, and then maybe they're parting again for a while, and maybe in some years in the future they'll come back together again. For another person, it might be that they're just with their soulmate and so on. Now, does everyone have a twin flame? I have no idea about this. There seems to be the idea that not everybody has a twin flame, but everyone has a soulmate, No idea, not really. But I think this kind of connection isn't necessarily that common. Whereas when people tend to find their soulmates, a lot of times this can happen quite quickly at a young age, and then they just stay together, and it's quite an easy journey very often. So I would say it seems to be less common. There's an awful lot of them out there, the twin flames, but it isn't perhaps quite as common as the soulmate journey. So it's a journey back to love. It's a journey back to forgiveness, back to love, back to wholeness, back to learning about who you are, back to just greater levels of awareness of self, and merging yourself with the divine in a greater way, and discovering your purpose, your divine purpose on this planet, and then coming into union, if you can, if you're lucky enough to, with your twin flame, if you're both in that place and you're receptive to it, and you want to move forward in that way. And then you can nurture each other, nurture yourselves as you both step forward into your divine purpose together. And then when you get into that place of union, you're going to have this increased joy, at having this reunion, because this is your person, But as I say, the journey is different for everyone, potentially, in terms of at what point do they get together, and do they actually get together? And for some people, very fixated on that, they're going to be missing the soul lessons, the spiritual lessons that are very much a part of this journey as well, So I would say it's something to not flinch from, although that sounds incredibly hard. It's something to work with. If you need to have more spiritual tools at your disposal to help you understand the journey, then there's no reason why you can't do that. Plenty of divination cards now that are just all about the twin flame journey. So that can provide comfort for you as well. Sometimes, if you get a twin flame deck, and you're feeling a bit despondent, and you're missing your person, and you're wondering if they're thinking about you too, and so on and so forth, you can get a twin flame deck and then consult the cards, and then there's no doubt there that there will be something there that can offer you a little bit of comfort during a bit of a trickier time, and so on. But yeah, so it's a journey of faith as well, faith in the divine, trust in the divine, trust that it's happening for a reason. We can only ever see just a tiny bit of what's going on this planet. So we don't have access to the bigger picture. When we think of a twin flame union, you're talking something that's lasted many incarnations probably. And there could be a pattern within your relationship. There could be an awful lot of healing, an awful lot of learning. It really can be catalyst for change. It can be a catalyst for immense growth. And so stepping into that as much as you can sounds key as well. So yeah, a difficult journey, but a rewarding journey as well, because you're going to learn so very much about yourself. And as I say, the divine is always there. If it's too much, talk to the divine. Just say, God, Goddess, You know, this is too much. This is really hard. I need a bit of help. Please give me a sign. Please give me something to go on, you know, and then look out for the signs, because there will be something. And yeah, there's no, as I say, there's no prescribed sense of how long this could last. But I think holding that forgiveness is key. And obviously having the caveat that it's still your life, right? So if it is intensely painful and you think you just can't deal with that and you want to walk away, then you know that's going to be your choice as well. You have to do what's right for you. And equally, if the other person is so unhealed as to actually be toxic in your life, for example, again, you might have to make that very difficult decision to cut them off and go live your life. But it's, you know, assuming that isn't the case, then you're talking about just a lot of forgiveness and patience. Patience is really key. Patience is really key because you've both got to come to that level of awareness, start waking up to this connection, working with the divine as much as possible, working on your own issues, starting to do the healing journey, starting to open up to trust, to love, to each other, etc. All of this is just going to take a fair bit of time as well. So just having that bit of patience with the process too. And practicing self-love, coming back to yourself and doing some things that nurture and nourish yourself, especially if you're an overthinker, especially if you're locked in that left hemisphere of your brain, because that is not going to solve this. You've got to shift out of that. And sometimes change could happen very quickly, I'd imagine. Sometimes the change is simply your mental perception of the problem. So if you can drop the all of the fears or the worries or the, you know, because chances are when you think that your souls are connected, if you're feeding the energy field of both parties with your fears, that's going to potentially serve as a bit of a block as well. Remember that whatever you're putting out, whatever you're thinking about, whatever you're focusing on, you know, we always think of our bodies as just being the end of us, and then everything else outside is external energy. But when you do discover that you're one consciousness experiencing itself subjectively, whatever you're thinking of inside, you know, there's going to be a ripple effect as well. And especially with regards to your twin flame energy, they're going to be picking up on your energy and vice versa, you know. So cleanse those chakras, unblock any chakras that are blocked, things like this. This is where healing comes in so very much as well. So yeah, I don't know if that's been useful to anybody. Trying to keep the faith is imperative. Trying to keep the faith is really, really part of this. You know, it's happening for a reason. And it is, as I say, it's humbling, because when you have those feelings of this energy superimposed onto you, that can be like nothing on earth that you've ever experienced in your life before, and not anything that you could ever explain to another human who isn't going through the same journey. You know, I was thinking, when you find out all these different elements of it, that they do well to have like twin flame support groups, you know. They really would, where you can just go and talk about this to other people going through it too, because then you've got people who understand you. Because especially if your divine counterpart isn't sort of aware of what's going on, and you're having all of these incredible feelings and incredibly difficult feelings, but you can't talk to them, right? Then it could be really helpful, wouldn't it, to have a group where you could all go and talk about this sort of thing, and feel heard and feel seen and feel acknowledged, and, you know, all of that, because it's a journey like no other. It's a journey like no other. But remember, ultimately, it's all a journey back to love, the same as with any other spiritual journey. It's all coming back to love. Greater levels of self-awareness are gonna lead to love eventually. And love is all there is. You contain love and you are love. You know, the divine is love and the divine is in you. So you are never separate from love, even if you are, you know, a chronic overthinker, a raging overthinker. It's still love. Still love. You just need to come back into your heart is all. Just take a breath. Clear some of these chakras, you know, step outside in nature. That helps. Do whatever it takes that's healthy and have a bit of faith, you know, because if you're feeling these feelings, and especially some of the intense feelings that they're in your energy field and things like this, if you're starting to get this sense of Hieros Gamos, and again, some twin flame cards actually do have Hieros Gamos cards in the deck as well. So if you think that's all going on, I guess you can take heart that, you know, you're growing closer together. Levels of awareness are coming into play, perhaps. And as I say, just take heart. Ultimately, if you take only one thing from this video, that on the spiritual plane, your soul and their soul are intertwined and are not apart. So take heart, and you're not alone. And if you're feeling a bit alone, if you're feeling really down, if it's just been absolutely driving you mad, or if it's just been bringing you down, etc., maybe take a look at some videos on YouTube, etc., about the twin flame and see if you can glean anything. Check out some of the readings of some of the energies at the moment, because I feel as well, like I say, like there are cohorts of people and they're all experiencing the same thing. So you get the sense of the twin flame journey being about the collective as well as being about you and being about your person. It's also about the collective, because when you get together with your twin flame, talking about energies, the love that you have for each other is true love. And it's so beautiful that it's going to have this ripple effect out into the collective as well. So that's why I guess union is probably quite an important part of this process at some stage. But it's held in the loving arms of the divine. You know, who knows when that union's going to take place? It's okay. You know, don't panic and don't worry, because there are bigger parts of this that you can't see, but that God, Goddess knows about. You know, things will happen when they happen. You know how sometimes in life you get moments of beautiful serendipity or grace when things just happen to fall into place at the right place, right time, right person, right thing, you know? And I kind of look at this in the same way. I feel like when your energies are aligned in the right way, which almost sounds like some kind of prophecy from a film or something, but I do kind of feel like, you know, there's going to be a point when it's like doors just start opening and things just line up. And it will feel effortless after months and months and maybe years of endless struggle and loops of thinking and negative thinking and worry and staying up and not being able to sleep and all of that. There's going to come a point where walls come down, barriers come down, communication becomes easier, and suddenly things just fall into place. So yeah, I hope that helps somebody. It's a weird journey, it's a convoluted journey, it's a difficult journey, it's a supernatural journey, a sacred journey, and ultimately a journey back to you and back to your heart. So try not to worry, it's all okay. The divine has got your back, despite however crazy and messed up things might look on the physical plane. You're gonna be all right. And your situation is going to work out exactly how it's supposed to. All right, so it's going to be all right. So take good care if you're on this journey. Take good care anyway, whatever you're doing. And yeah, I hope this has been useful, and have a lovely weekend. Take care. God bless.